Welcome back to a Timey-Wimey Pod, where we watch every episode of Doctor Who from 2005 onwards. My name's Rebecca.
I'm Haley.
And today we are discussing Series 3, Episode 11, Utopia.
The day has finally come, and I can't believe it that we are talking about Utopia, and we will get into it here in a few minutes after the fantastic facts. But I just want to say right here, right now, we are Utopia lovers and defenders.
We have been waiting to talk about this episode since we started this podcast a year ago. This is one of the episodes that we've been looking forward to this one the most, to be honest.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. So I can't wait to get into it. But do you want some fantastic facts?
Yes.
All right, this episode aired June 16th, 2007. It is written by Russell T. Davies and directed by Graham Harper. Derek Jacobi, who plays Professor Yana / the Master in this episode, he's made a few Doctor Who universe appearances. He previously played a screenwriter who thinks he's the Doctor in a 2003 audio drama called Deadline, which sounds really interesting, by the way. And then he played an android version of the Master in Scream of the Shakla.
Okay, a few different thoughts. First, I really want to listen to that first audio because that sounds so good. I love Derek Jacobi in this episode, and the thought of listening to him with that plot sounds so good. And also, I feel like so many random things in Doctor Who lately have been just somewhat connected to Scream of the Shakla.
No, it really has. Like, there's been a lot of little appearances recently. Let us know if you guys want us to do an episode about that, short little show. That might be fun. But my next fantastic fact is that John Bell, who played Crete, the little kid on the silo, working, who they meet, he actually won that part as part of a Blue Peter competition, and he was 9 years old.
Stop. I love his character in this episode, and that's so cool that he won.
I know. And I never knew that before there. And I think he's like, he does a decent job as a kid actor. You wouldn't know that he just was a competition winner.
Yeah, wait, was this like the same contest holder that had the contest for Love and Monsters?
That it is. And apparently John Bell's gone on to act in other stuff. I guess he was in the Hobbit movies. And sounds like he's had a decent career. So good for him.
Good for him.
Paul Mark Davies, who plays like the main future kind guy, he later goes on to play the Trickster in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And the Trickster, if you don't know, is like one of the big overarching villains in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Interesting.
So lots of little connections in this episode, which makes sense. This episode is chock full of references to past episodes. We have Boomtown references. We have Parting of the Ways references. We have Gridlock references. We have... Maybe that is it. I'll come across it.
We have little references of like former masters with the voice with a stopwatch.
Yeah, there's so many references. It's crazy. And I love it. But let's get into the start of the episode. So for us, the first time watching this, we had never seen Torchwood. Still haven't, TBH. Don't be mad. But so when Jack comes on screen and is just running, it was a complete shock to me the first time. I had no idea it was coming. And I love that it just starts with him like running towards the TARDIS, like, Doctor, and Ten and Martha are just hanging out.
I was gagged when I first saw this. And then I was pissed.
Let
me get on my soapbox because I have a bone to pick with the Doctor. We learn in this episode that the Doctor knew Jack was alive on the game station. He purposely left Jack behind. He purposely let Jack hold on to the TARDIS through the time vortex. And he knew all of this. He abandoned Jack, who he had been traveling with, just because Jack is quote unquote wrong because he's immortal. What do you mean? Doctor,
It's
shut
so
up, sit down.
no other episode makes me dislike the 10th Doctor as much as this one does, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just so crazy to see the way he treats Jack, and like him just looking at the screen and was like, oh, let's go. And then he sees him for the first time, at the end of the universe. This is the first time he's seen him since Parting of the Ways, and he's just like, dang.
No, it is wild. And it makes me so upset and so
Mm-hmm.
mad. And like he didn't even tell Jack about Rose until now. Like this is when Jack learned. Like he didn't have the decency to track Jack down at
Of
any
course
point in
not. Of
time.
course not. No, he was
And
never gonna do that.
no, I know he was never going to do that about Rose, but like I still can't believe he just fully abandoned him on the game
Oh, I
station.
know. Yeah. It's insane. What, arguably one of the worst things he's done. Like it's crazy. And knowing that he somehow knew, which we don't know how he knew, but he somehow knew
Mm-hmm.
that Rose accidentally made Jack immortal. It's insane. It's just absolutely insane.
Oh, it's completely insane. And something else that is completely insane is that damn hand that Jack is carrying as his doctor detector. That
That
hand could,
hand.
you guys, you have no clue. You have no wait until series 4, wait until next season in our podcast and you will hear our thoughts. But so insane.
Also, that's what I was going to say earlier. Christmas Invasion references.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that we forgot to mention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, Martha, we get the trio in this episode:
Mm-hmm.
Jack, Martha, Ten. What do you think about this trio? For me personally, one of my favorites. One of my
Mm-hmm.
favorites. The competition between 10, Martha, Jack, and Rose, 9, Jack, it's a stiff competition. It really is. I think at the end of the day, it's going to go to the OGs, 9, Rose, and Jack.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this trio. I love their dynamics. I love Jack and Martha. 10 and Jack, that dynamic works really well. I love it.
Oh, me too. I love the whole trio dynamic, and I would agree with you. I would have to give it to the OG trio. But Martha, Jack, and 10 are just so close because they just work so well together. And I love the dynamic between Jack and Martha and how Jack was finally giving Martha all the tea about Rose this episode
Mm-hmm.
and just like filling in so many blanks for Martha.
Oh, I know. Like Martha's little reactions to things in this episode is so good. Like when they
Mm-hmm.
are, hugging about Rose being alive, and she's just like, "Oh, good old Rose." And then when she finds out she's blonde, oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite lines. Oh, she was blonde, of course. Cuz that's so relatable. I I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Martha's great.
she is. And I love the ongoing gag where Jack just says hello to people and the doctor's like, oh, shut up and stop. It's just
Mhm.
so funny. And Jack's like, I'm only saying hello. And I don't know, that gag is just always so funny.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned this before back in series 1, but I just want to go over it real quickly. We're big Jack Harkness fans. I'm sure as many
Mm-hmm.
of you are, but not John Barrowman fans for reasons. You can look into it yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
just know that when we're talking about Jack, we're talking about Jack and not the actor that portrays him.
Yeah.
Okay, we have so many Rose references. I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
should just like get it out of the way and go through it,
Yes.
because one thing about Rose is she's going to haunt the narrative, but she really haunts the narrative in this episode.
No, I completely forgot just how much she haunts the narrative in this episode. Like, there are
Mhm.
so many mentions of her that I completely forgot about happen in this episode. We
Yeah.
first, of course, have Jack learning that she's in a parallel world. She didn't die in the Battle of Canary Wharf. And it's a cute mention because Jack and Ten are just really happy about that she's alive and she didn't die in that.
It's such a great moment that he even asks about her because he
Mm-hmm.
knows she's on the list of the dead, but he still asks about her. And I think people forget like how close Jack and Rose were and like their
Mm-hmm.
friendship. And so it just makes me so happy. And then that moment where he learns that she's alive just in another universe, like they're both so happy and they just get a moment to kind of celebrate that our girl's okay. Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then they talk all about her when Jack is in that radioactive room.
And we get a fantastic flashback to the Bad Wolf moment and parting of the
Mhm.
ways.
Yo.
And I just love that we get that quick clip, and it's just such a good mention. And
I love when Jack asks what happened and Ten says Rose. Rose happened.
mm-hmm.
He talks about how she took the vortex into her mind and it could have turned someone into a god or a monster or whatever he said. I can't remember everything he says, but he says everything she did was so human. And that ugh, that cuts deep because if that doesn't describe Rose and like how the doctor feels about her, I don't know what does.
Oh, definitely. And this episode has so many lines that I just love so much. And one
Mhm.
of those is like kind of during this moment, Ten goes, the final act of the Time War was life. And
Mhm.
that was because of Rose. And I just find that so like beautiful and understated. And it's just, I don't know, it just like, it's really emotional when you think about it that way because Nine was just so much that post war doctor,
Mhm.
literally.
Yeah. And then, Jack asked if she could change it, if she could change it back.
Mm-hmm.
And Ten has to explain that he took the vortex out of her. And then he says that she's gone. She's not just in a parallel universe, she's trapped there. And I love the way Jack says sorry, and Ten just says, yeah, because they don't need to really say anything more than that because Jack knows more than anyone else how much the doctor cares about Rose, how much Rose cared about the doctor. He knows that dynamic
Mm-hmm.
all too well.
Yeah, and I really love that moment between the two of them because like you said, they just both completely understand and they don't need to explain. And I think after like a whole season of 10 being, very, for lack of a better term, down bad about Rose being in a parallel universe, like we all are honestly about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
It would it was really nice as a viewer, and I'm sure it was nice for the doctor himself to have someone who just understand,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And I know this moment is not in this episode, so it's technically not a Rose mention and it's not brought up at all, but I'm going to bring it up, okay?
Oh.
Because in this series 1 episode Dalek, Rose tells the Ninth Doctor, hey, maybe you aren't the last Time Lord in this
Mm.
universe. And I just want to say she was the OG.
She
She
clocked
knew
it.
before anyone else did.
Mhm. Forget Face of Bow, forget Yana. She clocked
Mm
it. She knew.
hmm. Mm hmm. She knew. She had the receipts. She didn't know how, but she had them.
She always Rose would know.
No, literally. We've said that so many times this season.
Also, I just have to talk again about how in the scene when Martha's like, "Is that what you do? Is that what you do to all of us? You
Mm
just
hmm.
abandon us?" And Jack says, "Not if you're blonde." So
I
good, so funny.
I die laughing every time
Hmm.
because it's hilarious. But I do feel for Martha because I feel like this is the episode where she truly I believe, realizes the reality and
Mm,
understands that she really does have unrequited love with the doctor, and that, you know, obviously that doesn't mean the doctor doesn't care about her or anything like that. But I think with just all the talk about Rose, Martha is just kind of beginning to realize that it will never be a thing between her
mhm.
and the doctor.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about Chan though and Professor Yana. Give me all your thoughts.
Chantho, love her. She's a queen. She did not deserve what happened
Oh,
to her at the end of this episode.
no, she did not. Rest in peace to my girl Chan though. A little trivia for you. Do you know when we see that actress again?
Oh, I sure do.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. For those of you who don't know, the actress comes back as the fortune teller in Turn Left.
Love her. She is iconic, and I love Professor Yana. I love his outfit. I love how eccentric he is. I love how eclectic he is. I love him so much. Derek Jacobi ran in this episode. Like,
Mhm.
literally
Oh yeah.
insane. Captivated audiences. I love this man, and just we'll get into it, but like the back and forth throughout this episode between him and 10 being
Mhm.
like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe people haven't appreciated you. You're brilliant. If you were born in another time, you'd be revered." And it's just like, then you remember that's the master, and he would not say any of that to the master. And it's all so good.
It is so good. Like they get to really connect for like the
Mm-hmm.
one and only time basically. And then everything gets taken away later. And yeah, we just meet this professor as this like hard working guy trying to get everyone to Utopia. And Chando's been with him for 17 years. We find out
Mm-hmm.
that they're on her planet and she's the last of her kind somehow. That's crazy. Also, they mentioned that the theory is that the humans become the future kind. Does that make sense?
Not really. That part has never made sense to me. I just try not to think about it too deeply.
Yeah. I just think about the future kind as like just these other people on this planet.
Loki, they remind me of cavemen. So I
Mm,
just kind of think of them that way. I don't know. Like, I don't hate them. Do you hate them? Do you wish they
no.
weren't in the episode?
I don't really have any major opinion about them. I
Mm-hmm.
think they like add to the intensity of the episode,
Mm-hmm.
the fear. I like the moment at the end when they're trying to get in and then when they're running, that's really interesting. But yeah, I don't really have any major issues with them or I'm like, they're just taken away from the story. I think they were used just enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, too, at least for me, when I first watched this episode, I really anticipated them being part of the big bad. And then we
Mm,
kind of learn after this episode, they really have no place anywhere after this episode.
yeah, and that's fine.
Oh, totally fine. I don't care. But they do bring up the suspense.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Crete?
Oh, he's such a cute little kid.
I know, like his performance is so good, and I don't know, just like him, I forget the name, but him just like going up and down the halls of searching for
Oh
this one guy's
yeah.
family. I don't know why, I just really love that. I
No,
can't
me
explain
too.
it. And I love how Crete mentions that something along the lines of that he was told that in Utopia the skies are made of diamonds. And that phrase for some reason just has a grip on me.
Mm-hmm. The skies were made of diamonds. Let's remember that phrase in Crete
Mhm.
for the future. We'll get to it. Oh, I love all the interactions, with or temporary trio, Ten, Martha, Jack, and Professor Yana and Chando are so great. Like,
Mhm.
when Ten says he's a hermit and Professor Yana's like a hermit with friends, and he's like, yeah, Hermits United, get together every 10 years to talk about caves. Really funny. Love that line. And then
Mhm.
when they're all freaking out about Ten's hand, That is so good.
Martha's reaction was literally me when I watched the Christmas Invasion for the first time. Like, it is so funny. She's like, "You grew another hand?" And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Not on my street, you don't."
No, and she's like so taken aback by it. And it makes sense because she's a doctor and people don't just grow the hands back. And so I love that it really like takes her a moment and she's kind of she's a little shaken up.
And something else that cracks me up about that moment is Chantho is like, "Oh, is that a tradition with your people to have it?"
Okay, but
Which is
how
so
did
funny.
Jack get the hand? How did he get the hand? How did he know it was the doctor's hand? Where did he get the hand?
Such a great question. Was it covered in torchwood?
I don't think so. I think because I think in the first episode, because I've seen, clips and other people
Mm-hmm.
watching it and whatnot, it's just there and it's like, what's this mysterious hand? And you don't realize till the end, till this episode, that it's the doctor's hand. So I don't know if they ever explain where he got the hand, but I really want to know where he got the hand and how he knew it was the doctor's hand. Also, I love that Ten recognized it as his hand instantly. He was like, "That's my hand." One line that I really love in this episode is when the Doctor and Yana are talking about how in another time Yana would have been revealed as this genius, as this great scientist. And then he says, all those damn galaxies, they just had to go and collapse. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so sad, but such a good line.
Such a great line. And something that really stood out to me while I was watching this episode, like this rewatch for me, is that he's a proud man in general. But in this episode, especially, like he is very proud of his brilliance and he is very proud of being clever, which just makes like the downfall at the end of this episode hit so much deeper because
Hmm.
he was so proud of being clever, yet he did not figure out that Professor Yano was the master till it was too late.
Of course not. But then I love how as soon as we find out that he is a Time Lord, the Doctor just kind of knows. He just has this gut feeling that it's the Master because of course it would be the Master.
Yeah, and when Martha is like, side note, by the way, I love just like the whole sequence of Martha
Hmm.
being like, "What's that much? Let me
Uh,
be right back. I'll be right back." And she like, I love when she runs to tell him. But going back to like what you said, he doesn't want to believe Martha, and he's and that's why he's like, basically, it depends which Time Lord if I should be excited or not, which is just like a really funny phrase when you think about it. But
yeah, I know. I love that line. Like, he's like, yeah, it's great. Well, it depends which one.
yeah, I feel like he knew in that moment because I feel like he knows his luck wouldn't have brought him like, I don't know, his mother.
One of the, like, just a random one. No, it had to be the Master.
Yeah, it had to be.
I love Professor Yano's face when he sees the TARDIS for the first time and just like the
Mm-hmm.
recognition, but also not knowing it. And like there's fear and curiosity and something familiar. It's so good.
It is so good. And it gets even better because throughout this episode, Yana just hears the word Dalek and time travel and the TARDIS and
Regeneration.
yeah, and the Time War. And then the sounds of drums in his head just gets louder and he keeps disassociating more and more. And you start to see him really being affected, which is really interesting to me compared to John Smith during Human Nature Family
Mm.
of Blood. Because even when the TARDIS was in front of his face, he was like, I've never seen this before in my life. What are you talking about? Time travel? I don't recognize this journal. So it's really interesting that like the master, I don't know, was more awakened with those phrases than John Smith
Hmm.
was.
Yeah, it makes sense because I think John Smith, he had more to live for and more reasons to
Mm,
stay. And also, the master had been suppressed for so long. Like, he's
Yeah.
been Yana like all these years because he regenerated as a little baby or into a little baby. So, what was your reaction the first time you saw this episode, and what did you think of the reveal? All your thoughts, because obviously, when we first watched this as new Who fans who had I knew nothing about Classic Who, we didn't know who the master was.
Girl, I did not know who this man was, but I still screamed. I was just aghast. Like, I just did not know what to say, what to do. Like, this whole reveal was insane, and I wish I could relay how it felt not having any context, but just knowing that none of this was good. Like, it was just honestly insane, and I don't know. I still probably reacted the way I would have reacted if I knew the context.
Mm-hmm. Same. I had the exact same reaction. I was freaking out, shook, scared.
Mhm.
But the way the reveal is done is perfect because if you are a
Yeah.
classic fan, you know exactly what this means. And if you're not, you just know by the characters' reactions and the music and everything happening, oh, this is not good. This is not a good thing. This person maybe not who we wanted to see. And it's so perfect. And even if you know who the master is, you're freaking out. If you don't, you're still freaking out. And I think it's just one of the best well crafted reveals of the entire show.
Oh, it is easily like one of the best reveals in all of Doctor Who. And just everything working together makes it just go so hard because you have the music, you have the drums, you have Yana just like slowly changing. Like you can just tell by the look in his eyes. You have the face of Bo being like, you were not alone. And like you said, you see the reactions of Jack and Martha and Ten is like literally terrified and gagged. And then you just see the master slowly turn around, and the complete shift that Derek Jacobi did is actually insane because it's like it's two different characters in the same outfit and the same environment and like the same set. Two completely different people, though.
The 10 minutes we get of Jacoby as the master is so brilliant and so
Mm-hmm.
horrifying because he's scary. He's scary and just yeah, seeing the difference in his character and suddenly he's just this entirely different person and he's destroying all their work, letting the future kind in. The way he's like talking to Chan though, it changes everything and it is such a well done performance.
And just him holding like the two sparking cables and going towards
Oh.
Chanto makes just like the not even the suspense, but the terror of it all so much worse.
Mhm. When he says he's the master for the first time, it
Mm-hmm.
chills.
The whole thing is so good. And when Chantho is like, I can't let you do this. I can't
Mhm.
let you like ruin everything we worked for. And she's like holding him at gunpoint and he just laughs at her. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, poor Chin though. She tries
Yeah.
to save the day, and she has to watch like the closest person in her life just like become someone else, and I feel so bad for her.
Me too. And the way that the last act of her life was trying to save others by
Mhm.
shooting him because she had no clue he was the master and could regenerate. All she knew was that this man suddenly changed and he was suddenly really upset over a stopwatch, and her not doing anything about the stopwatch jam, which, like, by the way, Master, what do you expect? It had a perception filter on it.
He's like, "Why didn't you ask me about that watch?" Sorry.
No, literally. But I mean, that goes back into his character. Like, the Master is literally psychotic.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I feel my heart always gets so sad for Chantho. and just like the end of her story and her being the last of her kind then, but she was so brave.
And then the master shot, he goes into the TARDIS. And I love
Mm-hmm.
when, the doctor gets there and he's like, everything's changed. Like, everything's different now. It's just the two of us. Like, please, just like, oh, it's such a good moment. And David's acting is so good. And he's so desperate. We know that the doctor knows who it is. And he's so desperate because it's just the two of them now. Everyone else is gone. The Time Lords are gone. And he doesn't want to have to fight the only one left.
And I think too, we've seen since the beginning of New Who with series 1 and the Ninth Doctor that the Doctor just carries so much pain and trauma and guilt, rightfully so, from the Time War and from destroying everything on Gallifrey, that of course the last thing he will want to do is like be up against his biggest foe of all time, even though he's always done dirty by the master. He doesn't want to have to be the one to make that actual decision of him truly being the last Time Lord. Just,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he always has that slight hope that, the master can change. And I think that's what we see here is he's just pleading, but he kind of
Mm-hmm.
also knows it's like far-fetched because he just from
Yeah.
classic Who, I haven't watched classic Who, but just from what I've seen over the years, like the master's always been unhinged.
They
So
are the ultimate frenemies.
oh, 100%. But yeah, I feel like you do get a lot of complexity in just that like 30 seconds, 1 minute of 10
Mm-hmm.
pleading and the master being inside the TARDIS, and then 10 using his sonic to try to like stop the TARDIS from going and working, and the master being like, oh no you don't, and then the next thing we know it's John Sims, and he's even more unhinged than Derek Jacobi.
Yeah. I love anytime we get a regeneration scene that's not
Mm-hmm.
the doctor regenerating. That is just very exciting because it obviously doesn't happen very much. The effects in this scene are really weird compared to like every other regeneration that we see. And I'm like, the
Yeah.
effects are somehow worse than when Christopher Eccleston regenerated 2 years ago, but I guess let's ignore that. But it's still a great scene. And I love how he's like, well, if the doctor can be old. If the doctor can be young, so can I. And I think John Sim was just the perfect person to play off David Tennant and just be
Mm-hmm.
absolutely insane and nuts. John Sim, I if he has no fans, I'm dead.
Same.
Because yeah, I think he's great, and I think his performance as the master was a great way to introduce new fans to who the character is.
100%.
And can we just talk about how incredible the buildup has been this entire season, and having Human Nature and Family of Blood, introduce us to the Fob Watch, and then Martha sees someone else have the Fob Watch. Such a great moment. It's the buildup, the storytelling. They don't do it like this anymore.
No, they really don't. And also the face of Bo at the end of Gridlock
Hmm.
being like, you are not alone. And
Which
having that brought
the
in
acronym is Yana. Like,
Yana.
oh my gosh.
And he cooked with this episode. Literally, in my opinion, this is my opinion, okay? But I think this is one of his top episodes of all time.
Yeah, and you're right. Your opinion's correct.
Thank you.
Who is the star of the show?
Okay, so many to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to choose two, and I'm going to explain. So, the star of this episode is primarily Derek Jacobi because that man, insane. Professor Yana, amazing. The Master, terrifying. And I cannot not choose him.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. But I do have to choose Chantho because I really, really liked her character in this episode.
Yeah. No. Oh, we didn't talk about how Martha at one point gets her to talk
Yeah,
without, starting and ending with Chando. And just, when she says no and they laugh. Oh, such a cute, wholesome moment.
it is. And they have like a little girly chat, and I just love it
Yeah,
so much.
I know. But you're completely correct. You picked exactly what I was going to say. Derek Jacobi just gives an absolutely legendary performance in this episode that I think has stayed with fans all these years, and we always remember like his few short moments as the master. He really just brings back he brings the character back to life for a whole new regeneration, and then paves the way for John Sim to take over to face off with David Tennant, and it's just it's perfect. And Chando, rest in peace, my girl. Like, you deserve better. You should have made it to a real Utopia. And rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Queen.
What is the heart of this episode?
Oh gosh.
I know.
Um, don't trust random men with a stopwatch.
Yeah. If you see a man with a little fob watch, be careful.
Be very careful. Don't fall in love with a man with a fob watch,
No.
and don't work with a man with a fob watch.
And don't open the fob watch.
Oh, absolutely not. Just leave it alone, back away, go on the other side
Back
of the world.
away. Yeah, I agree. Do we have any reviews from the past?
Yes, we sure do. And all of these reviews are from IMDb. And this first review I have, I'm going to read a few different parts of it. One part because I just thought it was funny and really showed the time period. And
Mm.
then the other part is more critical of this episode. So this review was written on June 16th, 2007 by the user one underscore letter. And to start off, one of the sentences in the review is, "Our lovely Captain Jack is back. Harkness, that is. Jack Harkness. Jack Sparrow is so last year."
Oh my gosh, not the Jack Sparrow reference in
No,
2025.
I know. I just thought that was actually really funny and I couldn't not bring that up.
No, that's so funny.
But they go on to mention later in the review that the actual plot of this story of this episode is a bit weak for them.
Okay.
They they said, for one, how is Utopia Utopia if the universe is about to die? Shouldn't Utopia be destroyed too?
The story is that there's always people are always gonna hope for a way out, or and it was just a theory. Utopia wasn't like a real place. It was just something they were like, there might be a Utopia.
Yeah. They continue on saying, but it was nice and simple, set at the end of the universe and the year 10 trillion, although it was really only a lot of the Doctor fixing things and pushing buttons, not a lot of actual story. We
Uh,
never actually know if they find Utopia, but this was a to be continued episode, so watch for next week.
well, I bet they were disappointed.
Yeah. And they say, then we have the master. Oh, yes. He's back in this episode, which personally surprised me. I expected to see him next week. Nevertheless, it was a stroke of genius. It all ties back to the two-parter Human Nature and Family of Blood. Think to yourself, how did a Time Lord survive the Time War? John Sims was brilliant, and you actually got the feeling that, oh no, the Doctor's met his match.
One thing we gotta talk about is it was a really smart decision to introduce the master here
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the universe when we're all expecting to meet the master in present day, because Harold Saxon, who could that be? I wonder who. And we're all expecting it in like a present day episode, and then it just hits you right here at the end of the universe. Also, make note of every time the show is at the end of the universe, because it happens all the time. And it's like, haven't we been to the end of the universe before? And every time they're like, we're at the end of the universe.
The amount of times you are correct is actually insane. And I feel like we have to make a tally as we go
Oh, yeah.
along.
Keep track. This is the first time, I think, but
Yeah.
definitely not the last.
Nope. This next review I have is an iconic one, and I just have to give a shout out. It's a pretty lengthy one, and so I'm not going to really be reading it. But I have to give a shout out to the user James the Actor, who on June 16th, 2014, wrote a whole review about how much they love Chantho, how they wish Chantho was rescued, and didn't dive into this episode. They also
Oh,
share that, they've had two dreams about Chantho.
stop.
Yeah. One dream, very interesting, won't repeat it. The other dream, they
Oh,
dreamt that Chantho was alive at the end after all. So I just had to give a shout out to this iconic review. I've never read anything like it. I admired the dedication. I'm a little interested to see how much they like the movie Avatar.
I think they really like the movie.
Yeah, so had to give a shout out to the icon of a review. All right, this the last review I have is from the user Crinny, and they wrote on January 3rd, 2018, that during a slow binge of the entire show in 2017, they knew nothing about this episode going in, but about halfway through, they were bored and watching it mainly on momentum.
uh,
Yeah, they continue in saying that the story was junk sci fi, sloppy, and poorly explained, evoking a concept as mind bending as the end of time, and then filling it with mugging Road Warrior extras and the cast of Les Mis.
what?
What does it even mean that it's the end of time? It really felt like another Lazarus experiment or Idiot Lantern, which is not to
Whoa.
which is not to deny the greatness of parts of it. The performances of the main cast, the brilliant setup for the three-parter, etc., which were fine and tasty, but stuck onto an underlying premise as uninvolving as a cardboard pizza crust.
I just don't understand how you could be bored watching this episode.
Me either. And, not everything is for everybody. And I completely understand that. There's been episodes over the years that, aren't my favorite that other people
Mm-hmm.
tend to absolutely love. But I feel like Utopia is the exception. Like, even if you're not crazy
Yeah.
about the master, even if this isn't your favorite, one of your top episodes, it's still a very enjoyable episode. It is no love and monsters or fear her.
And Jack is back. Like, how can you be bored when Jack is back? But you'll have to let us know what you guys think about this episode and if you agree with like the reviews or if you agree with us that it's one of the best episodes.
Let us
Now, I
know.
have a lot of stray observations before we leave because this episode has a lot going on,
Mm-hmm.
contrary to what other people may say. When 10 at the beginning, when 10 is like, we're at the universe at the end of the universe and you two are blogging, um 10, that's not what blogging is.
No, literally, I'm always so confused on what he means by that, truly, because not what
I
it
don't think you
is.
know what blogging is. Also, just the word blogging is so funny. I love it. I love when they all agree to go to the silo and they're like, silo, 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 silo.
Mm-hmm.
It's really funny. The guy who plays the guy watching his friend go to the radiation room before, Jack does it and he dies, the guy watching him, he was putting his all into that 30-second performance. You would think that he just lost the love of his life, the way he acts and reacts to that scene and the guy dying. So shout out to that guy. I love when Jack asks how long the doctor's known about him being immortal, and the doctor says, "Ever since I ran away from you." That's a crazy line. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to say to someone.
Absolutely insane. I don't know how Jack stayed calm
Yeah.
after being told that.
Martha's talking to Yana and Chando, and she explains that the doctor just like travels with people, and she says, "I make us sound like stray dogs. Maybe we are." I don't know. I just really like that line. I can't explain it. It's kind of true. It's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Very funny.
When he yells at Martha and is like, "What did he say?" Rude.
Calm down, sir. Calm down. You left Jack behind. You have no room to yell at Martha for trying to help you out, give
Yeah,
you
tell you
a
more.
warning.
Also, I love when the doctor and Jack are running down the corridor and their coats are just,
Yes.
yeah, it's so good. And those are all my stray observations.
I have some stray observations myself. One being at the very end of this episode, Martha mentions that she recognizes that voice,
Mm-hmm.
referring to John Sims and the TARDIS. Also, during the little girly chat between Martha and Chantho lets it slip that she has a little bit of an unrequited love or like
Mm-hmm.
of Yana, kind of like Martha. And, they were able to
Yeah.
comfort each other with
Mm-hmm.
understanding.
Glad they had that little moment.
Me too. Also, the moment when Tin asks if Jack wants to die and Jack says that he
Oh.
doesn't know.
And then the way he says Jock. The
And
way
Jack just
David
ignores it.
Tennant
Mm-hmm.
just delivers that line and he like presses his face against the window and is like, Jock. Like, oh my, I can't explain it. It does something to me.
Oh, me too. Also, and my last stray observation is that Jack dies twice in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
First, when, they land the TARDIS, and then second, when he electrocutes himself. And I just find it really funny how both times Martha just like activates into Dr. Martha Jones, and Tin is just standing to the side, like, leave him alone, and offering no explanation to Martha until Jack just revives himself.
I
Really
know.
funny.
Yeah, I love the second time it happens, and the doctor's like, so you got a room that no one can walk into without dying. And then Jack comes back and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I got just the man for you. It's perfect. I love that moment.
Me too. Additionally, all the people are launched in the rocket, not a rocket contraption, and are heading to Utopia, whatever that is, whatever that means. I wonder if we'll talk about it in the future.
We'll see. Are those all your stray observations?
Yes, they are.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back next week with the sound of drums. But until then, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at TimeyWimeyPod and email us anything and everything to
timingwimeypod@gmail.com and give us a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on.
And with that, we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.